I was thinking last night about Elvis, the day that he died, the day that he died. Welcome, everyone, to a live Q&A where we're going to be discussing a number of topics here. We've got UFC Austin, we have UFC Vegas 83, we have PFL championships, we also have the merger of PFL and Bellator. And then we also have Bobby Green, who's left without an opponent after Dan Hooker breaks his arm once again. That was an injury that he sustained in his previous bout, the same injury. And now you see Jared Gordon puts his name into the hat. He wants that rematch. We saw a no contest last time out when Bobby Green locked horns inside of the 8-sided octagon versus Jared Gordon, and there was a clash of heads. There was an inadvertent headbutt. Some folks claim that the headbutt was intentional. I don't necessarily agree with either side of that, but what we do have is a fighter who's coming off of a victory over Marco Madsen, in dominant fashion. And then you have Bobby Green, who just brutally knocked out Grant Dawson. Man, I'd love to see them run it back. Make it happen. Make our day, UFC. So the top of the card wide open. And then you have Renato Money Moicano throwing his hat into the mix, his name into the hat. Is it going to happen? I'm not sure. But questions will most definitely be answered soon. You see the photographs on the overlay here. Song Yadong, Chris Gutierrez. Now, that fight was supposed to take place in Shanghai, a place that I've been. And a backstory, I was almost at the fight between Kelvin Gastelum and Michael Bisping quite some time ago. I believe that took place in Shanghai. But here we have UFC Shanghai headed to Las Vegas, and only 8 bouts are currently listed on the card. One that jumps off the page, though, at UFC Vegas 83, also known as UFC Shanghai, is Su Mudaerji taking on Alan Nascimento. That, my friends, is going to be one hell of a scrap. I was at Su Mudaerji's last fight against Matt Schnell, where we saw Su Mudaerji come out and hit and land on Matt Schnell with just about everything he had. And after the fact, we found out that Su Mudaerji took that fight with a torn ACL, gets choked out unconscious on the mat. And here we are. So lots to unpack here. Great to have you. Thank you for chiming in. If you'd like to pose any questions that you might have in the chat, feel free to do so in the comment section and I'll address those. But I also wanted to address some comments that were shared over Twitter earlier today. You had me posting that I would be hosting this live Q&A, and a few folks put some questions in there. So we'll start with the first question that I received, and it was from Al Pickett on Twitter, and he asked, how do you balance your personal and professional life successfully? And that's a great question. That is a great question. First of all, I've been on the shelf for the past 2 months with a badly broken ankle. I tore 4 ligaments and fractured my fibula, and I've had a lot of time to dedicate myself to the YouTube channel here and and the picks and breaking down fights on a regular basis and working my way back. The other thing I have to mention is I have 2 sons and family, and what I try to do is manage my time wisely. I believe that that is a huge, huge component to to a successful endeavor here on planet Earth, is to manage your time wisely, and I've tried my best to do that. I was listening to a radio commercial earlier today where it was about fathers who teach their sons how to ride bikes. Got me thinking, taking my son fishing, taking my sons to play baseball, taking my sons to play soccer, um, teaching them to tie their shoes, helping them with their homework, and managing time in the kitchen, in the workplace. So many different things that we've got to get done every day. And then you also have to break down fights, right? So on average, I typically spend 20 to 30 hours a week breaking down each fight card. And it's a labor of love. It's a lot of work. But one thing I try to do is be the early riser, get up around 5:30, 6 a.m. every morning, and then get the tape cracking. If I'm able to bust out a few fights here and there, take notes. I'm a note taker. I think that helps me prioritize my day. And so that's been a difference maker for me. But also, I realize the amount of sacrifice that it takes to be successful in the handicapping world. And this is not something that you can fake. You have to really, if you have a track record of many, many years of success, you have to be able to put in the time. You can't fudge the numbers. You can't watch a number of podcasts and come to a conclusion. You have to run the tape, watch the fights, and make a prediction, make the proper prediction. And that takes some cojones to do that, because at the end of the day, there is transparency here, and you are held accountable for all of the picks and bets and what have you that you make. So, and that's the beauty of being third party tracked, is that there's nowhere to hide. It's the third party track record is a truth. So it's a beautiful thing, and it's something that I'm proud of. So I have to mention that having the track record to fall back on, knowing that if there's a losing event, that you come back to it and that you address it, and that you live with the consequences too. That if you lose, you face the choir and you answer back. And that's why I try to put myself in a positive situation, in a situation where a bet is more likely to cash than it is not. If you look at my tracked record, I have thousands, I believe, of tracked bets, and we're hitting at a 62% cash rate. And that's partially due to the fact that I approach this from a dollar cost average philosophy, where there are times where if I'm confident in a play, I will make an early stake, and then I will add to it throughout the week at multiple price points. So that's just something I've been at for a while. So that's number one. I hope that answers your question succinctly and thoroughly. I believe that time management is key, and I have to be able to do justice to everyone in my family, my wife, my kids, and everybody that I interact with. It's a lot of work, but it's something that I enjoy doing, and at the end of the day, it's a prosperous endeavor. So I'm grateful for that. So thank you for that question. The next question I have is from Pogi Rob. I believe Pogi Rob was the creator of the PRP that Cody Safdie has spoke very highly of throughout the years. And as we've seen in years past, and I believe this year as well, that he hit a parlay that had many, many legs to it. and he asks about live betting strategy. Let's see. Do you line shop live? I will say I do play at a number of different books, and when I am at the computer or on my phone during an event, I've got the live event synced. I got to say, priority number one, though, if you can make it to the event, then number one, if you are at the event, you have a massive edge in the live betting community because you are beating the taped delay that happens. There's a few second delay between the actual event and the event hitting your computer screen or your phone. So if you're at the event, you can lock in live wagers and see what's going on and have a better sense of timing. And you have to have very, very quick trigger fingers. That's the other thing. If you have very quick trigger fingers, you can get live bets in like that. And I personally, I remember being in Newark at I think it was UFC 284, where Henry Cejudo fought Aljamain Sterling, and that bout I made a few live bets, and I remember the numbers were much better than you typically get when you're at home or you're behind a computer screen. So that is number one. And even I'll be honest, if you got a we've got a comment here. Welcome. Thank you, LP. I appreciate you in the mix here. If you have any questions, feel free to post them there. So we're talking live betting. We're talking about live betting strategies. And number one, if you have the means to get to the actual event and you can get close to the octagon and see what's going on inside the cage, that avoiding the tape delay that happens will give you a much better live betting opportunity. I've done it at a few different events, and it's paid dividends. So happy to share that with you. So that's number one. Number two, let's see. It says, do you factor in judging? Well, I will say this, that if you're getting a massive line and it's a close fight, a situation where the dog odds are plus 800 or plus 1500 in a fight where you think that there may be some question marks, yeah, you're bet your ass you hit the dog in that situation, and the judges will stake their claim. And sometimes the judges make horrific decisions. We've seen it time and time again, where if it's a close fight, a split decision, if you're holding that plus 800, plus 1500 ticket, goodness gracious, put yourself in a solid situation there. So that's number one. As far as judging goes, because you can't necessarily trust the judges. I've seen some horrific judging in my day, and I've been watching this sport since the early 1990s. Let's see. The other thing I think the biggest take home point also as far as live betting goes is if you know that a fighter has a propensity to gas out, and there's a massive discrepancy in cardio, that is bar none a difference maker when it comes to the live betting lines. And you'll see that line change when someone lands a takedown. Someone who's a minus 150 favorite may balloon out to minus 425 or even higher, just based on that takedown being landed alone. And take that information, do with that what you will. But you'll see that also creates an opportunity for the other side of the fight too. If that fighter that was just taken down has great takedown or has a great get up game, then look at that. You've got value there. Do you believe capping other organizations is harder, such as PFL and Bellator? Therefore, do you proceed with more caution? And do you consider how much getting down larger units is trickier? That's an excellent question. If you look at my BetMMA.tips page, I believe it's like 96 or 97% of all of my action has been on UFC. I rarely, if ever, make plays on PFL or Bellator or the regional scene. And that's mainly due to me having a singular focus. I believe it's better to lock your eyes in on one target than to have 8 or 9 targets out at once. But I will say also that when there are times when I do watch all these events, I scope out the talent. But when it comes to wagering my hard-earned money, I typically focus on UFC. I will say, though, remember, you have to understand the rule set in each of these promotions. I know in Ryzen, things are treated differently. The scoring system's different. PFL, they don't allow elbows on the ground. So if you're coming into that fight and this guy is somebody who lands elbows, this fighter that you're backing, and that's taken out of the equation, that's something that you have to take serious. Now, I will say, PFL, the judging, yes, has been somewhat suspect throughout the years. Bellator as well. I mean, there have been situations where I've gone to the well with Bellator with some fighters, but it's a very small percentage of my bankroll compared to UFC. And that's primarily due to also time management. But I do see there are other handicappers out there doing due diligence and spreading their money around through multiple different promotions. And if there's a 2-week gap, that's the other thing. We have a 2-week gap between UFC and between the UFC events. So look what's happening here. We've got PFL this week, and now you're watching lines fluctuate. I know Derek Brunson is making his way over to promotion. He's fighting a fighter with knockout power who's moving up a weight class to middleweight. And Ray Cooper, man, does he have what it takes to put Derek Brunson's lights out? Yes. And does Derek Brunson have the ability to take down and smother Ray Cooper, who's coming up a weight class? Yes, that could potentially happen as well. But I'm going to be targeting unders in that matchup. Let's see. So hopefully that answers your question, LP. Now, we've got a number of other comments and questions floating through the Q&A here. Who would you favor in a potential rematch between Jared Gooden and Bobby Green? I feel like Green would open as a decent favorite, even though he wasn't looking super good in the first fight. I agree with you. And the other part of the equation here is that Jared Gordon, he did go unconscious briefly due to the initially there was a headbutt, but then he was pounding out on the mat, right? So that happened. And then you also had Jared Gordon, who didn't make it to fight night on I believe he took another fight. Was it Jim Miller? He took another fight and didn't make it to fight day. And he ended up taking a loss there because he shared that he had a concussion, suffered a concussion. So yeah, I think that there would be some value on Jared Gordon here for a number of reasons. Number one, you saw what he did against Mark Madsen. You saw how successful he was against Bobby Green earlier in their fight. And then also, I think that Bobby Green's odds are getting blown out a little bit here because of his victory over Grant Dawson. And he was a massive underdog. Bobby Green was a significant underdog against Grant Dawson. So it's just something to mention. All right, let's see. Okay, Rob says, I appreciate that you stick with what you know. It's an underrated skill. And that's something that I carry into different sports as well. You won't see me putting out plays for NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, etc., women's field hockey. I try to stick to what got me to where I am, and I understand that it is helpful to be well-rounded, but also you have to know what your strengths are. And at this point, I've identified that I have the ability to cap these fights fairly well. So it's something that I find comfort in that. And the other things, I don't feel the urge to have action on all of these different events. Even Super Bowl, things like that. I'm not going to go put money on stuff where I don't think it's going to cash. And I have to have conviction in what I'm playing. I need a reason to believe in what I'm promoting, what I'm playing, what I'm touting, etc. I'm not here to. It's not like I'm selling a product. I'm making a bet that I believe in. So that's an excellent question, Rob. Thank you. What's your philosophy for cashing out of a bet? For example, if you like fighter A at the beginning of the week, but by Saturday, you've had second thoughts about it for small loss and plus the ego hit. Yeah, that's a great question. LP, excellent question. Some folks say hedging is for pussies, right? You've heard that expression. I'm not necessarily a believer in that. I think that if you do see a situation where, I may have made the wrong decision. Yes, you tell your followers, yeah, I'm going to hedge here, or there's an ARB opportunity, etc. I remember, who is it? Jim Miller fought Alexander Hernandez, and that was a situation where you watched everything play out during fight week, and I ended up on both sides of that fight. I believe I ARB'd in that situation. And it does happen every once in a while, but you also have to, it's an ego check. You have to check yourself before you wreck yourself, as they say, and be honest with yourself. And if you're not willing to lose um, all that money, you could arb and put yourself in a better situation. Or if you see somebody who, for instance, looks horrible at weigh-ins and the face-offs, they look horrific, or the other fighter ends up coming in 3 or 4 pounds overweight, like we saw with Christian Rodriguez, and he looked great against Cameron Simon. Uh, that was a situation where I potentially add more. So it's a great question, excellent question. So yeah, there are a number of factors here, and I don't necessarily see it as being an ego hit. I think that experience is a huge factor here, and it's the best teacher. Experience is the best teacher. If you have hundreds or thousands of bets under your belt and you have learned from teachable moments, that's the key. You could have teachable moments that you don't learn from, so you have to learn from them. Wow, LP, you've got some great questions here. Let's see. Do you think that passing a win is worse than a loss? Not necessarily. I don't get hung up on that stuff. I I'm comfortable with passing. It's okay to pass. And the thing that I think it hurts a lot, it hurts the soul of a lot of handicappers, is when they put in 2, 3, 4 hours worth of homework and then they don't reap those results. They don't have a bet. That's okay. That's okay. I try to analyze things and then make an educated decision. So great question. Excellent question. Wow, you've got some good ones here. How do you trust your process, or know when to adjust it slightly if you're going through a period of losing a few events, because it does feel like your life is falling apart after a few losing nights. All right, excellent point. LP, another great question. If you start to see a dramatic fall off in not only the ROI, but the way fights are ending, and you are getting reads wrong on a regular basis, yes, that is a clear sign that you need to make some adjustments. And I'm talking, I'd say if it's over a month, you could have a month-long bad run where you have 10 or 12 bets that just don't go your way. But if it happens a month or two consecutive months, this is where, if I'm a firm believer in the 100-unit philosophy. So 1 unit equals 1% of the bankroll. And if if you're throwing 15, 20 units at a card or at a fighter, can you imagine risking 10 to 12 units on one fight, on one fighter? That is a recipe for disaster no matter how confident you are. And the other, if you compound that by telling folks or touting something like that, if you are telling your followers to risk 10 to 12 units, you're telling them to risk 10 to 12% of their bankroll. And that is not, I'm not a believer in that whatsoever. I think that's negligence to do that. So, um, the other thing is, if you did want to take a couple of events off to reset, to recalibrate, that's something that's occasionally worth doing. The other thing is, before you begin doing this seriously, I firmly believe that you need to have an established winning process. If you don't have an established winning process, then um, your implied probability could potentially be off, and and then your unit risk is going to be off. Your risk mitigation could potentially be off, and I mean, it's a serious business. So you want to make sure that you have a trusted winning process first. And how is that done? Through time and experience. It's not something that you just decide, oh, I'm just going to start tracking my bets and now everybody watch what's happening here. I'm going to risk 20, 30, 40% of my bankroll here. And let's let it roll, because you might not be in this game for long if you do that. Let's see. How do you think the future of AI will affect the UFC betting market and handicapping process, plus market for other cappers and tipsters? I think that is potentially an issue. I think it's already here, to be honest. I think that behind the scenes, a lot of this is in play, but also you have the human experience, which you can't. It's difficult to quantify how humans are going to react inside of an octagon, the in-fight decisions that they make. And also, the other thing that's difficult to quantify is when you have stylistic nightmares. Um, AI may have difficulty working that through. Let's see, how many units do you keep in a betting account and when do you make withdrawals? Because if you're managing risk, you're not going to be betting more than 10 units a weekend. So you do have, yeah, that's a great question too. Well, the good thing about having many, many lines available for many fights is that you can spread your units across um, different books, and you could have 15, 20, 30, 40 units um, out hanging around at books from here and there and all over the place, from fights that could be booked now through early 2024. So there are a lot of options available to you. I do believe that what I recommend is, if you do have some semblance of success, that you end up making that initial withdrawal to take out what you initially invested and play with house money, and then continue to win, and then win, so that even if worst case scenario happens, you're still going to break even. Or if you want to come back and double that withdrawal initially, so that you're getting out of this with double what you initially invested. But then you also have to compound how your unit size changes throughout the course of time. So if you start with um, 10, 20, 50, 100, $500 units, etc., you have to be able to you have to be able to understand the math also, because at the end of the day, you want to make this a prosperous proposition. So excellent question. All right, let's see. Do you think some books are generally sharp in MMA? If so, which books do you consider sharp? That is a great question. I'd say Bet Online is a solid, as far as a sharp book. They kind of set the tone for the rest of the market these days. And I'll be honest, Caesars tends to be a fairly sharp book. I've found that sometimes uh, you'll notice that Caesar's. I've noticed through the years that their book tends to be fairly sharp. Let's see. Oh, live odds. You know, initially, I mean, I've played at a bunch of different books. I still say that DraftKings is a solid spot as long as you're not pulling too much money out. That's the other thing too, is that you need to keep everybody honest, and you don't want to get banned or limited at times. If you know, you know. That's right. Yes. Let's see. Let's see what else we got here. Do you mind paying up for a winner? For example, the bookies cap a fighter at 70%. You think the odds are accurate, but you pay up on the bet because you think the fighter will secure the win. Well, that's a good question. And there have been times that I've done that. And that's part of me believing after I cap a fight and I've assigned my implied probability, I will play the number up until a certain point. So, yes, if I think someone's capped to win at 80%, minus 400 or so, I will I will continue to add throughout the course of the week. Um, let's see. Or do you need a smaller edge? Let's say 2.5%. It depends on the situation. It depends on the situation, and also the different variables involved too. So stylistically, the matchup, what I see at weigh-ins, but I do try to get my plays in early. There have been times where I've made a lot of plays on fight day, and I'll be honest, a lot of folks will try to get their plays in early because they want subscribers to buy their picks, but that doesn't always work out. Sometimes you get the best line on fight day. So there are times where, for instance, if a fighter historically has a tough time making weight, I'll make sure that they've made weight and that they've looked great on the scale, etc. Now we've got a matchup coming up at UFC Austin where there's a fighter who's moving down to welterweight, and they haven't made welterweight in many, many years. Are they going to make it to the scale at that weight? If they are not, is the bout going to be potentially canceled? What are the implications of the line, etc.? So those are some things to take into consideration. Mr. Mason took me for more than I can admit in 2022. That's when they turned sharp. Yeah, they BOL works some magic over there. How often do you look ahead for future events before, because we're tying up units for months? Well, granted, I've watched basically every fight that's taken place in the UFC since its inception, and I know, since I have a catalog of fights in my brain, if a matchup gets released, odds get released, and I know, or I have an idea what the outcome will be, and then I see, whoa, these odds are off. For instance, Dominic Reyes versus Carlos Ulberg. I believe he opened at minus 205. Hit that. That was a free play for early 2024. So yes, there are times when I'll do that, but there are times when it is much more complex. And I do believe that it's better to focus on one card at a time. Let's see. LP says, let's see. All right. Big ups. Look at you guys in the chat here. I appreciate you. Let's see. Hometown fighter. If someone's back is against the wall, are they talking about retirement? Is this their last fight on their contract? Fighter interviews, etc. Yes, I include all of those into the capping. They are a piece of the puzzle. It's a small piece of the puzzle, though. To add to that question, how much do you consider intangibles like age, for example? 10 years or more, 70% win percentage. Yep. I do take that into consideration. There are so many variables, but I will say skill trumps everything else. There are times when the better fighter doesn't necessarily win. That happens often. Who's got more dog in him? You have to be able to assess that. There are so many different variables to consider. So, excellent question. Let's see. Now, wow, we're about 35 minutes into this Q&A. We've answered a number of questions. Let's talk people's main event. We've got a number of fights headed our way in the near future. Let me just pull up best fight odds and fightodds.io. And it looks like to me that Sean Brady Kelvin Gastelum fight appears to be the people's main event for the UFC Austin card. I have to see Kelvin Gastelum make weight. This fight might not even happen, to be honest, at welterweight. I will say, if Kelvin makes the weight, then yes, he's a live underdog. And Sean Brady, we've seen him get brutally pieced up on the feet by Bilal Muhammad, and also Michael Chiesa was having his way with Sean Brady on the feet. Sean Brady and Pat Sabatini, I believe they're out of the same gym, and they both have struggled with striking defense. Extremely rough goes when it comes to striking defense. So, yeah, I think Kelvin's live. If Kelvin gets put on the mat, we've seen him submitted quickly in previous bouts. I believe it was it Jack Hermanson who took him out? I have to check it out. I think Hermanson was the one. But I have to see Kelvin make the weight. I see he's hovering plus 105, plus 100, minus 105 at some books. And then Sean Brady's blown out to a minus 125 betting favorite. I think the sharps will be on Brady. And Gastelum, I think that he's live here, especially being at Fight Ready. I think that's a huge plus. I also think that the Rob Font, Davison Figueiredo bout is a people's main event for the weekend, or people's co-main event. Rob Font is coming in as the minus 141 betting favorite, and he is taking on Davison Figueiredo, who I know he's come up short against Moreno, but he's been zapped, man. He's also getting up there in age. That should be an interesting fight. I think Figueiredo, it wouldn't shock me to see Figueiredo miss at bantamweight. We've seen situations like this unfold before where a fighter moves up in weight class and they miss. And Rob Font, he's taken so much damage through the years, but he's got that jab. If he could stay evasive for any amount of time, Figueiredo, he's back at Fight Ready. Should be a great fight. Looking forward to that. I do lean Rob Font though. I think that at this stage in his career, he's moving up a little too late. Oh, we've got some new comments in here. Let's see. Let's see. How does loss aversion influence your decision making? That is a great point. I personally want all my bets to cash. That is something that when I'm looking to seek and destroy. A lot of folks are looking at their value hunters. But here's something that I take into consideration also is I want to send folks home on a winning night, with the winning night. If I'm advising others, I want them to walk away victorious and have a little bit more money in their pocket than they did the previous day. So that's my approach. I do realize that if you are a value hunter, you have to take risks to make more money. And I see that angle as well. Personally, if you look at my long-term strategy, and I've been extremely successful doing this, is minimizing risk while maximizing reward. And it's something that maybe does take a little extra homework, but it's something that it's worked for me. But I agree that there are dogs out there that can cash for you. And I try to make it clear too when I'm breaking down fights on the Fight Morning Breakdown show. Let's see. How do you manage the psychological impact of prolonged winning streaks, and does it affect your risk-taking behavior? Wow, excellent question. Yes, there are delusions of grandeur in this space. We see it runs rampant. People will win 3, 4 events in a row and think they're God's gift to MMA betting. Um, God forbid someone has a winning year. They think they run this show, and it is this game will humble you very, very quickly. I've learned it. Everyone will. There are teachable lessons. Um, but the thing is, you have to learn from the lesson. If you make the same mistakes over and over and over again, and you go throw 20, 30 units on a position, and then you lose it, and then you tossed away all the profits for the year that you've worked so hard to attain, that's not something that I'm a believer in. Let's see. I agree with your concerns about Brady. The line's gone for a Brady bet. Okay, let's see. Brent says he likes betting on big underdogs in the flyweight and bantamweight divisions. He thinks there's skill level so high that there's a small margin of skill between the fighters. Hey, I agree to a certain extent, but I also believe that the skill level at flyweight and bantamweight is so much higher than any other division. Look at heavyweights. I mean, Dominic Cruz made some great points on the mic a few days ago when he was saying that look at the pace that these guys are pushing. And actually, it was Felder who said that, and then Dom Cruz says, "What pace? Are you serious? What pace?" And he pointed out that these heavyweights were just struggling to make it 15 minutes, and they were not the most highly skilled fighters. Thanks. I hope you're having a great day as well. How do you approach learning from mistakes? What mechanisms do I have in place to avoid repeating them? Well, I try to recap every event and take an honest look in the mirror. Also realize that if I see somebody does not have a get up game, or that they have some quit in them, I will not make that mistake again. I will look deeper into tape with future fights and look for some tendencies that really stick out there. Let's see. Wow, we've got a lot of great questions pouring in here. Are there certain specific post-vet review processes? Well, I will look over things with a fine-tooth comb after each event and look over each bet. And I'm my own harshest critic too. I'll put it out there. Every event, hundreds and hundreds of events, I'll meet the maker and post that, yes, I did lose. And I think that's the biggest thing that you can learn, is to be humble and take an honest look every time out. Let's see. How do you balance emotional highs and lows that come with the volatility of sports outcomes? Wow, LP, you are a treasure today. You are a treasure. We should have co-hosted this together. Next time, I got to get you in to co-host with me. Excellent question. Let's see. How do you balance emotional highs and lows that come with the volatility of sports outcomes? Well, there are times when, for instance, we had Rafael Fiziev. He ends up blowing out his knee in the middle of a fight, a very competitive matchup. And, you have to toss your hands up and say, oh, and that is where risk mitigation is so important. Can you imagine if somebody put 10, 12, 14 units or 14% of their bankroll on a situation like that? Not the smartest move. But everything in moderation, take a measured approach every time out. That is my motto. Let's see. Do you think sports betting is about grinding, not home runs? Like grinding out 1 to 2 units an event, keeping losses to a minimum? You're not getting a Bugatti money next week. Yeah. Hey, that's my motto. I know folks are enamored. They want to chase that dream situation. You want to hit that 10, 12 leg parlay. Look at how I conduct myself in on betmma.tips. I have maybe once every 8 or 9 cards, I'll have a parlay. That's just not my style. I try to assess value, and at the end of the day, we want to walk away with more money than we currently have. So, excellent question. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We're closing in on almost an hour here, and I'm actually going to have to log off here, get the kids to bed, and continue with the journey here. Look, want to wish everybody a fantastic evening. We didn't get to chat much about the whole PFL situation, but we will do that on another podcast. And also Bellator. I want to see where Patchy Mix ends up, who he ends up facing next. You have some Johnny Emlyn. You have Johnny Emlyn. You have a number of extremely talented fighters uh, headed somewhere. We'll say that. And I believe that we'll see some beautiful things unfolding in the near future. So thank you for tuning in today. Go get what's yours, and let's do this. Thanks again. This was a great experience. I really appreciate this, folks. Thanks again.